In this video, we'll take a look at how to work with the background. So double click on the workspace, open up the Fill JPEG, and the first thing we're going to do is to unlock the layer. So double click on to the background, giving it a name. I'm just going to key in Fill for now, click OK. If you have it docked in your workspace, you can actually undock it by pulling out the tab. So the next thing we're going to do is to increase the canvas size of this image. So right click onto this menu bar and select canvas size. Change the units into millimeters with these values 296 by 210. This is actually A4 size. Now before I click OK, make sure that you select the top portion of this 9 squares area. Now what this does is that it's telling Photoshop to extend the canvas towards the left, towards the right, and towards the bottom. So to illustrate how that works, we're just going to click OK, and it's going to see that if I'll zoom out, the areas of extension of the canvas is towards the left, the bottom, and the right. The top remains intact because you have selected right at the top portion. Next thing we're going to do is to transform this image and make it slightly smaller so that we can have a little bit more space, empty space around. Control T, that's the shortcut key to transform the JPEG. If you can't remember the shortcut key, you can just select Edit, go to Free, Transform, and that's the shortcut key. Click on this chain that you see here. We're going to reduce this by about 80%. Now what this does, that's a bit too much, so I'm just going to key in maybe about 90%. 90% seems about right. When you click onto the chain, this will resize proportionally against the width and the height. So as you can notice that if you hit in this value of 90, this changes to 90% as well. So I'm just going to double click the area, and it's going to be executing the transformation. Holding down the shift key, I want to pull this up slightly to make it a bit more just slightly higher, so that we're going to be filling in these empty spaces with the content within this image. In order to do that, the first tool that we're going to use is the selection tool. I'm going to use the first one. We're just going to select all the way from the left to say somewhere around here. Right, now in order to duplicate this and fill up this empty space, the best way to do it is to use a tool called ContentAware. So I need you to click on Edit, Fill, or the shortcut key is Shift F5. Select this option. By default, you should see that the foreground color is selected. So I need you to change this into the ContentAware and click OK. Now this is going to take a while, so just be patient. What it's trying to do right now is to calculate the area that needs to be filled, and it is using the pixels around these areas of selection and filling up the empty spaces, making it look sort of seamless or like an extension of the background. So when that's done, you're going to see something like that. It's not that perfect. We can tweak it later on, but I'm just going to move on to the next area. So I'm just going to select this area. Same thing. Once you've selected this area, I'm just going to hold down Shift F5 for the shortcut key to fill. I'm not going to change the content use, so I'm just going to click OK. You're going to apply the same effect, ContentAware, and while it's rendering out the pixels to fill up the empty spaces, we're just going to wait here and let Photoshop do its job. So this should be done pretty fast. So it's looking sort of like that right now. The last portion to fill up is the bottom. So I'm just going to select this area, around this area, and same thing, Shift F5, click OK, without changing the use, still using the ContentAware. This is going to take slightly longer because it's a long
surface area, so it should be able to fill up the empty space quite seamlessly. While we're waiting for that, when that's done, the next tool that we're going to be using is the Clone tool. As what it says, it is supposed to clone certain areas of the image to make it to replicate it onto the areas where you want it to be cloned.
So let me just demonstrate that by zooming in into this area, holding down the Control and the spacebar to zoom in. That is a shortcut key. And to move the canvas around, I'm just going to hold down the spacebar. I'm just going to move this As you can see here, there's some funny artifacts here that doesn't quite blend in with the grass background, so I'm just going to zoom out slightly. The clone tool is this tool. On the left hand side is called the clone stamp tool. How this works, before we move on, you notice that this area is still being selected, so I just need you to hit Control D to deselect. Control D to deselect. Or you can go to deselect at this select tab. Right, so once it's deselected, once you have the clone tool selected, you can actually adjust the brush size. What is the brush size? Basically, if I move my cursor up just to illustrate, the brush size is where your cursor is. I can actually tap on the brackets, the square brackets on the keyboard to increase or decrease the brush size. So I'm just going to give it to maybe about 150. The other way to do it is to click onto this icon where you can actually key in a more accurate value here. I'm just going to key in about 150 for now. So I'm just going to hold down the spacebar to move the canvas again. Now, how the clone tool works is that you have to select an area that you want to clone it. Say maybe around here. I'm just going to start off with this area here. Holding down the alternate key, you're gonna notice that the icon, the cursor changes into this hairline target icon. So I'm just going to click once onto the mouse. So what you're telling Photoshop to do is I'm just going to get this area and duplicate it over to this area. So while I'm just going to release the alternate key and going to move my cursor to the areas where I want it to be duplicating. So I'm just going to click and drag down, as you can see, and release, click and drag down, release, click and drag down and release. So what it's doing is grabbing all of the contents on the left side and duplicating it onto the right side. That looks kind of cool actually. Okay, I'm just going to finish that really quickly. So same thing for this area. I'm just going to select the top portion, alternate key down to select this area on the top, and I'm going to release the alternate key. I'm going to move my cursor down to the bottom. You can see that the mirror is being shown there. I'm just going to drag this all the way across, and I'm just going to do this really quickly to make sure that it kind of like blends in with the background, especially in the line areas like this. So I'm just going to key in, I'm just going to select this area, and I'm just going to move on and duplicate and get rid of that area. Now, it doesn't need to be perfect. You're going to have a lot more effects here, so it doesn't really matter because we're going to blur this image in the end.
So that is basically it for this segment of the video. Make sure that you save this file. I'm just going to call it fill JPEG. Click save, and then we shall hide and open up the next file.